Go. I am so grateful that so many people are here. Uh, this makes everything so much more palatable than if only one or two people are showing up, because it allows us to interact with a little bit with each other more, for one thing, but it also makes it a lot more interesting for when people go back and review the recorded sessions, for another thing. And the last one is, although I have an ego like everybody else, I honestly believe that I've covered every extraneous possible situation, but that is not the case. And so when so many people are here, you guys are able to find missing links or broken links, and you guys are also able to ask a lot of questions that helps everybody that isn't able to make it here. So I really appreciate the fact that everybody is showing up as much as possible. Now let's see. I'm going on my screen. I'm showing the transcript, and I have moved things to the chat. So if you guys have chat function on yours, please go ahead and turn it on. And for the people, um, Whitney, Allison, Brianna, and Christina, please, if you are able, please show your video, if at all possible. Sometimes I laugh at my own jokes because honestly, if I don't, nobody else will, and I think I have a duty to perform to think I'm funny. And when that happens, the screen will shake. So I really hope that nobody gets motion sickness and barfs on their computer. Although that would be entertaining, it's probably not a good thing. Typically, and I know that this is really boring for a lot of people, typically the first day of class, we go over things like the syllabus and all that kind of stuff. A lot of that I'm going to do fairly quickly because most everybody has already read it. This does have a freshman number on it, but all the artists that participate in it, you guys are already professionals. You already know what you're doing. So I'm going to touch on some points in the syllabus. If you guys have questions, please ask me. But there are a couple things that I want to clarify. And as we go through, we're going to do that. And we're going to basically go through the course overview, the attendance, Module 1, and Module 7.A. And you're going to see some different things on my screen when I share my screen than you see in your own. That's because I'm still editing things through. Uh, One thing that we are undergoing is an online course evaluation, review, and editing. What that means is how things look right now is not going to be how things look in 40 days from now. You know, by October 1st, it may look a little bit different. In the meantime, what that means is that I really hope you guys, as you go through stuff, read ahead, look at stuff, try out links, and let me know when links are not working anymore. I set this up 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been editing, going through, and changing stuff. Jason and I have been working on the course content quite a bit, and we've revamped it almost entirely from the first time I set it up when COVID hit, you know, in the ancient of days. And I want to provide the best experience that I can for this kind of class. This is a class that is really integral to your development as an academic artist and as a professional artist. I think that even if you're doing 2D animation and digital work, a graphic design, anything, it doesn't matter. This class is integral, which is one of the reasons why it is principal to your graduation. But that being said, and the fact that I am revamping stuff means that as we look at things like due dates and stuff like that, please, nobody freak out. They are going to have to be in flux for a couple reasons. One is I want to hear from you what we need to do to make the course material better. And also, I don't know, have any of you guys been in the Gunther building in the last 3 months? Anybody? I mean, you almost have to wear a hazmat suit and a breathing mask because of all the construction. What that translates to is we're probably not going to be able to get our kits until next week. And I don't, it would be completely irresponsible of me to hold you responsible for due dates and such that require the use of a kit that you don't even have. So please do not, if you can get stuff early, if you can get to the access to the materials, that's great. But please be aware that the due dates that you see are guidelines as of right now. I do have a pretty hard nosed, kind of jerky um, policy, I think, in the syllabus. Just you start losing points if you're a millisecond late, blah, blah, blah. The reality is, sadly, and I know that this may be a shock to a couple of you, we have to live in the real world, which means that things are going to have to be in flux. If all of you had an absolutely perfect opportunity to have a beautiful schedule and everything was working exactly the way you wanted it to in your life, you wouldn't be taking an online class. And so we have to be flexible. So, from my perspective, that means that my priority is making sure that you have the best possible opportunity to succeed in every level, which means, of course, that I have to be flexible. And from you, I hope that that means you will be also flexible as well. So I have had students before that have shot me all capital emails, which is never a good thing. When you shoot somebody an all capital email or when somebody sends you an all capital email, it usually means that they're trying to communicate that they're screaming at the top of their lungs. And I just hope that none of you do that. I hope that all of you are able to deal with that bit of flexibility that we really need. So does everybody understand that? I hope that is all right with everybody. If I need you to be flexible, I have to be flexible myself as well. So usually when we have due dates coming up, if it looks like there's not a chance in heck, I'm sorry, we're in Utah. I'm going to say heck instead of hell sometimes. If there's a chance, if there's not a chance in heck that most people are going to be able to get the due date, instead of screaming at me, just let me know, hey, we don't even have our kits yet. Can we get some flexibility? And of course, the answer is always going to have to be yes. Also, if something happens to you and everybody else is meeting a deadline, but you caught the hangnail on your toe at the bottom of a door in your apartment and ripped it off and you had to go to the emergency room, just drop a line and let me know. As long as you keep me in the loop, I am more than happy to do whatever I can uh, to accommodate whatever you need, every single time. Unless you're a jerk about it, then the incentive for me to help is not quite there. But most of you guys are probably not going to be jerks. I hope. If anybody is a jerk, please drop the class. Take your class from Jason. He will train you otherwise very quickly. How many of you have had classes with Jason? Anybody? What I absolutely love about him is there's a couple things. He knows his stuff backwards, forwards, and 17 ways from Sunday. He really knows his stuff. He is one of the leading experts as well on contemporary reliquary society, technology, and use of the reliquary in the contemporary art space. The other thing that I really like about him is he will tell you to your face it can't be done. And usually he'll do it in such a matter of fact way that I have seen grown men start crying. And then he will figure out at least 6 different ways to get it done anyway. And Jason is just the person I work with the most closely, but that is true of pretty much everybody on the faculty at UVU. And I just think it's wonderful. the whole school will bend over backwards to do everything that they possibly can to help you to succeed. All right. I want to start going over the course overview and talk about attendance, all that stuff that I mentioned. Please hold your questions until it feels like it's appropriate. Um, Meaning, please don't ask about questions on the final right now until we get closer to the final, for example, or don't ask questions about AI, for example, until we get to that part of the process. Okay. Otherwise, because although I hate people, I do like pretending I don't when we're in a class situation, and I will start answering your questions, and we'll get down a rabbit hole, and we'll just lose track of what we're doing. So please help me stay focused. I found out about 3 years ago that I'm on the spectrum, and I found out earlier this year that I have ADHD, and which I had no idea. I've been self-medicating with relaxing herbal teas for years, but I had no idea that there was actually something going on until I went over to there is the Spectrum building at the north end of campus. I don't know if you guys have been there. It's just a little ways away from the highway. Beautiful building, actually funded by families of students that needed extra help. Really beautiful building. And when I was talking to somebody over there, they looked at me with really wide eyes after about 15 minutes into our conversation, and they said, "Mr. Kosterok, you really need to get tested," which I'm taking as a subtle hint. But anyway, so, and I guess the technical term is neurodiverse. What that means, practically speaking, is my brain is like a pachinko machine. So I will be all over the place. And if you don't understand what's going on, it's because you're missing the 85% of the conversation we've already had back and forth inside my own head. So please be patient with me. I think if it's okay with you guys, before we go to that, we may run a little bit late tonight, but before we go to everything that I want to cover, and if it gets to 9 and you have to bow out, please go ahead and bow out. That's fine. But I will continue recording to the bitter end. But before we go on, I want to do a little bit of introductions, and I'm going to ask you about something too after we do that. See if it's okay with you guys. My name is Andrew, as you can tell from this handy dandy little thing at the bottom of my screen. I have been hopping around with different things for quite a while. In the 90s, I started my professional career as a stained glass designer and artist. I do historical restorations. Most of the tabernacles along the Wasatch Front, I've had a hand in restoring the historical glass there, and a lot of the other churches. I just finished a project restoring some damage from thrown rocks, of all things, at the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the Trinity Church at 6 South in Salt Lake. Absolutely beautiful building. Nobody should be throwing rocks at a church, period. And somebody did damage. I had to fix, and I restored some of those windows. But also, I curate stained glass. The historical windows in the church art museum. I did the restoration on those, the curation on those, as well as ones for the BYU Art Museum. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff as well. One of the most fun projects I did was actually earthquake assessment, damage assessment in the LDS temple in Chile, Santiago, Chile. The reason that was fun is because they put me up, they fed me, and Chilean spaghetti is nothing like the US spaghetti, but holy cow, all the food was awesome and wonderful. And the sad thing is that there was no earthquake damage. The people who had actually built the windows and insulated them had never done it before and had done it incorrectly. And so all the damage was caused just by the aging of the windows. But that was the most fun just because I got to go to a different country. And remind me at some point in the future, and I will tell you about my experience doing training for stained glass factories over in China. That was an awful lot of fun training them. I also do stained glass sculpture. I'm a bookbinder. I do a lot of traditional art techniques. In the 90s, I was actually a software engineer, and I designed fonts for WordPerfect magazine. I don't know if any of you guys had parents that worked for them at all, but they were at the forefront at the time of word processing software, and I designed fonts for them. In the night, right around the year 2000, I came across a book called that was titled On Diverse Arts by a monk named Theophilus, who about 600 years ago went around the guilds in Europe and just recorded all the art processes of the traditional arts that people were doing. I learned bookbinding from the curator of the Special Collections Library at Harvard. I learned how to do enameling. Nobody was available to do that, so I actually learned. I had to find out how to do it myself. Um, and when I started doing glass blowing and bead making, I set up the hot shop at BYU for their glass blowing program at the time. And I found out that with the bead making I was doing from somebody who actually was a professional bead maker, I've been teaching myself how to do it for a year. I've been using all the wrong equipment, have been doing it entirely wrong. And when I found out that when he took the time to show me how to do it correctly, it was like a door opened. Suddenly it wasn't such a pain in the neck anymore. And do things like sacred geometry. I kind of backed into becoming an expert in Islamic art, and I've actually published a book on Safavid architecture that is only available in Iran. So a lot of different kinds of stuff. I'm also a pluralist chaplain, and I work a lot with different faith communities, everything from shamanism to Wicca, um, Old Norse paganism, Hindu. I helped to build a Jain temple in Salt Lake, and everything in between. Lots of different stuff, lots of different kinds of things. And I say all that because I think it kind of demonstrates the fact that I only sleep about 4 hours a night, so I'm reading a lot. And I do a lot of different kinds of stuff. One of the things that is always exciting to me about this class is that no two of you do the same kind of art, but all of you are professionals. And that's exciting to me because that means I get to work with people that have a work ethic that is just head and shoulders above what you get in a typical high school student, for example. You guys are all professionals, you're all adults, and it's so much fun for me as a professional artist to work with fellow professionals in a class like this, and it's just really exciting. Anyway, that's me. Please don't take as long as I did. I was just rambling. If you want to just say who you are, what your background is, and what you really enjoy doing, that would be awesome, right? And at my screen, I'm just going to have you guys go across at my screen if that's okay. Next person to go would be Summer, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I'm sorry, I'm a little sick, so bear with me. I'm Summer Palmer, and I really enjoy painting.
All right, excellent. What do you do? Oil, acrylic, or watercolor, or what? I do acrylic and watercolor.
I mostly do acrylic. That's my favorite.
All right, excellent, wonderful. I love I love the kind of color purity you can get with acrylic, and it's really a fun medium to work with. Excellent. All right, Melissa.
All right. I'm Melissa. I am coming back to school after like 12, 13 years. But I came back I was originally doing communications and now I'm doing art and design. Yeah, it's just kind of a general bachelor's in art and design. But I really enjoy photography and graphic design.
All right, excellent. That's wonderful. Art. One of the people that I read is Heidegger. I think he was the kindest and gentlest of all the Nazi philosophers, but he was really instrumental in defining how we talk about phenomenology today. And he was really instrumental in expanding my understanding and appreciation of art as a communication tool. I don't think it's so much a tool as a communication medium. So that's really interesting that you're going from communication into a focus in art. That's fascinating. Okay, Mary. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Mary. Sorry, I'm at school right now, so there's people everywhere. Um, yeah, I'm in art and design. I've been in Utah. I'm going into graphic design, but I also really enjoy ink sketching and stuff like that.
All right, excellent. Very good. Okay, Allison is next.
Hi, I'm Allie. I am also studying art and design, and I really love painting. I've started to do oil and also really love acrylic.
All right, excellent. And this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm talking about, where none of the four people that have already spoken do the same thing. Even when they have the same focus in their degree, each of them focus on a specifically different medium. And I think that's kind of fast. That's fascinating. All right, Brianna.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I'm going into an illustration major, and I do a lot of digital art. I can't deal with like paints and stuff. Not my thing.
Mhm. All right, excellent. Very good. How about Christina?
Hi. I am getting my BFA in graphic design, and I'm also really interested in learning illustration. I enjoy watercolor.
All right, excellent. Wonderful. I was really heavily into watercolor. I was getting excited about it until I saw a retrospective exhibit by my mentor, Robert Marshall. He's passed away now, but when I saw his watercolors, I just thought, to hell with it. I quit because it wasn't worth
What's
my
the
time.
point?
Yeah, exactly. And I that's really disappointing to me now. What I do with watercolor now is a much more contemporary approach, where I there's a lot of graphic design elements into it, and I come at it from almost a printmaking perspective. But what is fascinating to me is seeing what people are doing now with watercolor, and it's just very, very cool. Down here in St. George, there's uh, there's a woman I know who's retired from her day job, and she specializes in photorealist landscape with watercolor, and it's astounding to me. So anyway, very cool. All right, Millie.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Millie. Trying to think. I really like watercolor too. I'm doing art and design. That's kind of my major. So, watercolor and just drawing for me. So,
All right, excellent. Very nice. Uh, One of my favorite people that combined watercolor and drawing was Paul Klee. Taught at the Bauhaus for years, and most of his body of work is just the surviving examples he did for his classes. So he just is absolutely amazing. And he did a series of works that were based on music that was on the airwaves at the time or performed at the time. And it's fascinating because sometimes you can almost tell what the music will sound like by looking at his artwork. And if you hear the music playing and you see the artwork, all of us artists immediately get it. We can see exactly what's going on. And it's really very, very cool. So excellent. His last name is spelled Klee, Paul Klee. Whitney.
Hi, I'm Whitney. I'm a graphic design major and I like to do photography just for fun.
All right, excellent, wonderful. One of the things that we're going to be doing towards the end of the semester is photography of ready-mades. And this first assignment is about photography. Um, as artists, it's really important to make sure that what we do is documented so it survives the initial presentation or the initial completion. And we want to make sure that the photos that we take are good, which is easier now with just the crappiest cell phone you have is still going to have a better camera than what I had available in my photo lab at school 25 years ago. So and Whitney, if you can think of, I would really appreciate it if you can think of anything like an AI program that people can put their photos through to get rid of backgrounds, anything like that, I would really, and any of the other photographers, I would really appreciate any advice that you can send me for really simple free tools that people can use to help them really have good photos. Please send them to me and let me know about them. I'd really appreciate that. So excellent. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Thank you guys for all doing that. I'm wondering, one thing I'd like to do, I think, is just put a little discussion board up where everybody who didn't make it tonight can just say the same kind of thing. Just add a sentence, what's your name? What kind of art do you do? What do you enjoy doing? Kind of thing. And when I put that up for you guys that are present, just say, hey, I said this in the meeting. It's going to be on the airwaves forever. And that'll be all you need to say, or already did, But I think that this week I'll do that. It'll just be a couple points for everybody to do, but I think that it'll be nice for just to kind of know what everybody does in the class. Do you think that'd be all right? Okay. Let me go ahead and share. Okay. Now, this is what my view is of the Canvas interface. And one of the modules that we did have earlier was being a diversity collaborator. That's gone now, but it does inform some of what I want to talk about as we go through this class. When we look at the syllabus, there are some things that I want you to really pick out. Now it says here the room. I'm going to edit that right now because we're not meeting in a room. But that room is really important. The GT 516B is going to be like right next to where you guys pick up your kit. So I'm going to change this to, okay. And does everybody know where 516B is? Do you guys know where that is? Okay. There's a couple ways to get to it. It's relatively easy to find, but when the kits are complete and the construction is out of the way enough so it's safe for you guys to actually enter the building, the kits are either going to be in that room or next door or across the hall or right in that area. In the diversity collaboration module that I'm removing, there are a couple of things that I point out that are really important. In today's world of fast-paced social media and everybody looking to lay claim to Andy Warhol's prophecy of 15 minutes of fame, what is fascinating to me is how readily so many people want to be declared a victim or to be offended. What's the problem when we start communicating, and art is a vehicle of communication? When we start communicating, what is the biggest issue? What is the biggest problem with going out of your way to be offended when you interact with new knowledge? Anybody? Can you effectively communicate? Can you effectively listen or get your message across if people go out of their way to be offended? No, I mean, it's impossible. And as artists, we are constantly challenging people's perceptions and people's assumptions all the time. So as artists, when we look at information, we have to decide at the forefront to set aside the potential knee-jerk reaction to be offended. Don't get offended, please. There is room enough in art for absolutely everybody. Not just that, but every voice is absolutely vital to art as a whole. There's no reason to be jealous of anybody else. And so as we move forward, please do everything you can not to be offended when we come across new stuff. Now, that being said, there are things that I have added for art research and things like that. You're going to be looking at a lot of different artists. that come from all around the world, potentially. And I want you to find, when you pick an artist to research, I want you to find somebody who is not at all like you, but whose art still resonates with you. And we'll talk about that more a little bit this week, but mostly next week. One of the things, all of you should have an email that is a pretty long email. If you didn't get it, let me know, and I will resend that. In that email, we talk about the textbook. We do require a textbook for this class. If we do it through the campus bookstore, because of this and that, it's going to cost a lot of money. We don't want to do that. We want to keep this textbook as cheap as possible, but it is necessary to the class. I call for the second or third edition, but you can get by with the first edition. That should be just fine. And I don't want you guys to spend anything if you can help it. If you are going to spend something, do it. Spend less than $30. Go on Facebook Marketplace. Previous students are selling their copies of the textbook. You can also rent it online. If you guys find something that is not in one of the 6 things that I recommend, tell me. And I give 6 different options in that email for finding the textbook. And you can also go on archive.org, I believe, or archive.net. Let's see. I'll tell you. Archive.org. You can go there and you can rent the first edition for like an hour at a time, I think, for free. So, any of those things are great. The reason why I say it's necessary for this class is because in each of the quizzes that you have to take, there are going to be things. It's an open book. You take it with the textbook in front of you or on your screen. There are some questions that seem like they have obvious answers, but if you are not using the textbook, you will get them wrong. And it's enough that you will lose like a grade level out of that quiz. So make sure that you have access to it. If you've already ordered your textbook, you're getting a hold of it, and it just hasn't come by the time the quiz is due, shoot me a message. I'll extend the due date, whatever I need to do to make sure that you get access, you take the quiz with access to the book. All right. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. And in that email, there are 6 different options for getting a hold of the textbook. Now, we do talk about accessibility services. Avail yourself of the accessibility office on campus, the accommodations office, if you need it at all. I do not mind working with them. They send me a letter. I say, okay, that's great, and tell them I've heard. I do not mind working. I want everybody to succeed. Sometimes, Jason has dyslexia. I'm neurodiverse and I have ADHD. Everybody has something. And if you need special accommodations, the proper way to do it is to go to the accommodations office on campus, communicate with them, and get a letter. I'm happy to help, but because this is a state-sponsored school, that sounds like something out of George Orwell's 1984, doesn't it? Because we get our funding from the state, you need to get that letter. And not a big deal. Just take care of it, and I'm happy to do whatever I can to help. Another thing, since we are using Canvas, you need to familiarize yourself with it. There is an assignment where you are required to take the Canvas training course. If you've already done that, just get your completion image or your badge, something like that, and submit a screenshot of the badge, and you get credit for that part of the class, okay? Also, there's no reason for anybody to be stressed out of their gourd unless you choose to be. If that's how you work, if that's the best way that you work, being stressed, fine, do that to yourself. But this class, I am not training EMTs. Okay, I'm not training nurses. I'm not training any sort of medical professional. This class is not necessary to your survivability on this planet. Please do everything you can not to get stressed. Like I said, I love herbal teas. There's some really good companies that make nice, relaxing ones. And Not talking about edibles. I'm talking about legitimate herbal teas you can get at Walmart. Do what you need to. Take this class, chill out. The best way to do this to mitigate your potential stress is pay attention to the due dates, pay attention to the read by dates, try to stay on track. If they start getting too close together, contact me, let me know. I'll extend dates, I'll do what I need to so you guys have the time you need to accomplish the course. All right. The course objectives are primarily for you to succeed, not for me to fail you. Okay. Ed, I do want to touch on something that's really important. As we go forward in the modules, there is precisely a one-to-one correspondence between time taken, time spent on your projects and the grades that you get. When you are satisfied with a project after an hour and a half when everybody else is taking 10 or 12 hours, go back and redo it, rework it, work on it, keep dealing with it. A lot of the times that will be reflected in your grade. And instead of freaking out, look at the comments that I've made on your grade and go back, rework it, and resubmit it. You can resubmit any of these projects, any of the things in this class, up until the last day of finals. So if you are reworking something over and over again and resubmitting it, it does not hurt my feelings at all. What that actually means is that you care enough to succeed. So do a project, rework it. Each of these projects should take you at a minimum of about 7 or 8 hours, at least. When you do this first house, don't slipshod something together. Take your time. All of you guys are successful artists in your own right. When you make a miniature house, you'll see from the examples, there's some really groovy stuff that people have done. So do the best you can and then rework it. All right. This class is not designed for you to produce masterworks, but it is designed for you to show and share your own craftsmanship capacities. Now, I want to also talk to you about research report versus the service learning project. And if we don't have time this week, we'll talk more about it next week. What this is, you do have an option where you can work with somebody in the community and design a service learning project where you volunteer your time and your specific set of skills, your specific skill set as an accomplished artist to create something necessary to the community. And if you want to do that, that will be instead of the research report presentations and stuff, because there are 4 elements to both the research report and 4 elements to the service learning project. You can do one or the other, but you will not be asked to do both. All right, so that's something to think about there. And go through this. We'll talk about it more next week as you have an opportunity to look at everything. So I talk about more of the assignments and quizzes. There is a writing component for each of the modules, and you are graded on how well you are able to communicate. I'm expecting that since we're artists, we're not professional writers. That's not an issue, but please be mindful of the writing. If it asks for 3 or 4 sentences, don't think that 3 words will get you by. And here's a grade breakdown. The easiest way to succeed in this class is to stay on top of stuff, honestly. And if there's any sort of issue in missing elements of assignments, you can always rework it and resubmit. All of you in your class lab fee, that is paid for an extraordinarily comprehensive kit that Jason is putting together. In that kit this year, we are also including a backdrop for your photography, because I mentioned that documentation is really important. Your kit will include a backdrop that you can use for photography. I have had people take photos of their things while they're holding it. which is going to be fine for the little house that you make because one of them is supposed to be kind of a funny interactive one, or can be if you'd like to. But when you show respect, documenting your own work, that translates into other people viewing your work with respect as well. It's I will actually, let me see if I can find a photo to show you. It does not have to be anything that's fantastic or professionally done. I want to show you something that I took on my phone that is an acceptable photo for this class. I'm going to stop sharing that. I'm going to share something else. This is a photo that I took. It took me 30 seconds to set up. I would recommend ironing the sheet that's behind it. That would make it definitely look better. But this is so much more preferred than to set something like this on a wood top table with your roommate standing behind it. You don't want to do that. All right. And this will be particularly important. We'll address it more as we do this first module. So I want to talk a little bit about how this course will work, how attendance works. We'll talk about that a little bit. And I want to introduce you to the tools of artistic critique, and we'll talk more about that next week as well. But I think along with documentation, I want to touch on something else really quickly. You'll see as you go through that there are work logs for everything. Keep track of your time. All of you are professional artists. All of you should recognize and respect the value of your time. So as you go through this class, just keep track of your time. You should find that you're spending on average anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a week on this class. And what I'm talking about is that's reading, that's watching videos, that's thinking about your work, that's planning out your work, and that's doing your work. All of that should be time that you account for. When you are doing a commission work, you're not giving the customer a price based just on the time that you're actually producing the work. Your time should also be accounted for doing things like background research, prepping the space, prepping the environment, gathering your tools, gathering the materials that you're going to use. All that stuff is valuable. And what that translates to in this class is reading the background information, watching the videos on the artist, taking the quizzes. All that kind of stuff should be stuff that you take into account as you keep track of your time. And the work log is just a little thing where you follow the model that I give, where you just write down on Tuesday I did this and spent 15 minutes. On Wednesday I spent 3 hours in the morning and 35 minutes later on. On Saturday I spent an hour and a half going through the 30 photos I took, collecting the best one, using AI to clean out the background and presenting them. And then I spent another half an hour putting everything up on the discussion board and responding to 2 other students' stuff. That's just an example, but I want you to be aware that your time is valuable, and that's what the work logs are there for, right? So just keep track of how much time you spend. Now, I think I addressed a little bit how this course will work. We're basically going to be meeting each week. There'll be a recording of this, so if you can't make it full time, or if you can't make it because you have a job or you live in the real world and you're just not able to, that's fine. But you are going to be required to at least watch the recording of this every single week. That's something that will give you an opportunity to ask questions, hopefully, or hear them answered. If you can't make it to the regular meetings, you can always email me with a question that you want me to address for everybody. This also gives us an opportunity when you submit works. I use our class time to look at the works and talk about how what people are doing that's right and maybe some things that need improvement. This ties in directly to the tools of artistic critique. What is the first word that comes into your mind when you hear critique?
I think of improvement. A critique always kind of shows me what I can improve in my art and work on.
Oh, Summer, that is wonderful. You live in a happy world. Excellent. Because when I hear the word, my stomach drops a little. And ideally, everybody hopefully should respond the way that Summer does. You know, it's a way to do better. But when we hear critical critique and those kinds of words, a lot of us have been conditioned to believe that it's a negative thing. We react with um, just kind of our heart drops a little. But critical is a word that is synonymous with intention. It should not mean cutting down, tearing apart, or anything negative. Everybody should hopefully look at the word critique, artist critique, or critical the same way Summer does. In this class, we are using the tool of artistic critique to examine things in a way that is most likely going to be different than all the other classes that you've had critiques in. Because most of the time, people will assume that they know what you were trying to express. And I think that's ridiculous. I mean, we create art to communicate what we're trying to express, not because we expect other people to already know. And to have that kind of level of hubristic perspective that they could do a better job at examining our thoughts than we can, it just astounds me. So but remember, what is the synonym to critical? I just said it like 2 minutes ago. It starts with an I.
Intention.
Intention, exactly. What we are going to be doing in a artistic critique is looking at something, examining it with intention. We're going to be using our big person words. I raised 5 daughters, so we're going to be pulling up our big girl pants and using our big person words to justify the thousands of dollars that we spent on our education, to examine things intentionally and explain them, describe what we look at, uh, process the information using precise vocabulary. And how that looks is it goes from somebody saying, oh, that's pretty, or I don't like it, to I think it's fascinating that you chose to use cool colors throughout the entirety of your piece with little highlights of contrasting elements. Now, that could also mean pretty, but would you rather hear somebody being precise or hear a roommate pat you on the head and say, oh, yeah, it's nice? Which would you rather hear?
The first one.
Yeah, precision. And that's what we're going to be doing. When you look at the artistic critique page, there's vocabulary there. I want you to be aware of it because by the time you guys take your Thanksgiving break, go home and see other people or family or whatever it is you do, when somebody tries to get you to validate your art education, you will be able to just pull out a can of whoop ass using precise vocabulary and blow them their snot out of the water. I mean, because that's how good you will be by the time we get to that point. So remember, we're going to be looking at artistic critique from a perspective of intentional observation and precision language. And I will try to give examples every week so you can kind of see how that works. And then as we get closer to the end of the term, everybody will record themselves speaking a critique, both of one of their own works and somebody else's work. And this video critique can only be about 3 to 5 minutes long. And it will be with you talking off screen and the artwork on screen so you don't show yourself. And if you do not like or don't feel comfortable having your voice on camera, you can write out a script and have your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your roommate, your family read it for you. And that is totally fine. Some of the coolest critiques have been there was a woman who had a very soft voice, but her boyfriend was in a biker club and she could not stand hearing her voice on the video. So, you know, he did all the recordings for her, and it was kind of like, this is Ashley. I'm going to be talking about my sculpture that's a sock puppet. And it was great, but he just read her script. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But it should not be any longer than 5 minutes. And we'll talk about more about those things later on too. I do want to talk a little bit about now I want to talk a little bit about how attendance works. The attendance, whether or not you come to the meetings, when you go to the attendance module, you'll see that, and I will show this to you right now. I'm going to show my screen. And the guy's voice was a lot scratchier, a lot more intensely manly than my voice. So it was just kind of funny to have him read the script that was written by this really sweet, mild-mannered lady. Okay, so the attendance, I give a little description of what it is right here. And then each week, when you look at that, you're going to go to the week that's dated the Monday of that week. And instead of seeing this class YouTube channel, I'm going to have a link on it that will take us to our class YouTube channel, specifically to the recording of that week's attendance thing. So if you're here on Teams meeting, you don't have to watch that. But in order to get credit, what you will have to do is submit 5 particular things that you learned during the course of the recording. And that could be that behind Millie's screen, you see a checkerboard of images on the wall. That could count for 1. Another one is it's obvious that your teacher really likes science fiction, hence his background. Sometimes you'll hear the dogs barking and yapping at each other. It's really funny that the little Chihuahua goes into Satan mode if the big Airedale tries to steal her food, and it sounds like a fight from a B movie. It is really ruthless. And that may be another thing. Or you could actually go the scholarly route and say, I learned today about mid-century modern architecture and how it fits in with our models of a house. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But you need to just submit 5 things that you learned during the course of the video. And that's how you get credit for the attendance. And this week, everybody should go to polyhedra.net. And before you submit your attendance, in that among those 5 things, include the name of the object that you've made. And we will talk about that in just a second as well. Okay, we're coming up on our hour and a half, and I still have some more things to cover. So if you need to leave right at 8:30, that is fine. After the recording is online, just go back to that timestamp and watch the rest of it if you can. So after the first hour and a half. I don't want to talk too much about applying the tools of artistic critique right today. I want you to read through that, and then we'll talk more about it next week. But I do want to show you what the assignment module is that we're going to be starting. And I want you to get started going through this stuff. I don't want to see anybody turning in their houses until next week. So, if you want to turn it in early, that's fine. But please don't submit any of the houses until after this weekend, because I want you to get an opportunity to work on it and what am I saying? To work on it and take several photos. You're only going to submit 5 photos, but I want you to take a lot. This area is right at the beginning of this module 1, and it just talks about some of the stuff that is going to be happening during the course of the module. And this same kind of model is followed for most of the modules, with the exceptions of 7.A, 7.B, 7.C, and 7.D. This just tells you which chapters you're going to be covering for the quiz. And then this gives you the quiz. And we'll go over this again next week, but I want you to at least go through it, look at it, familiarize yourself with it. This is what the quiz looks like. There are a mixture of different kinds of questions, true and false, and then short answer. And then it's also going to be fill in the blank kind of questions. This difference between fine arts and applied arts, this is one of the questions that is a ringer, and you need to look at the book for that difference. And as you go through, like this, the extremes of material choice, there is a very specific passage in the book where it talks about the extremes of material choice. And it relates how French's goal, what he did to get lighting for the Lincoln Memorial. And there's just different things. Most of the time, these answers are going to be just a couple sentences long, and that's what we need. We need just a couple sentences. Now, in this particular one, it says 9 ways of involving the viewer. There is a section of about 7 pages where it has lots of photos, but it goes through very specifically the 9 ways of viewer involvement on the part of the artist. And in this case, instead of listing all 9, you're just going to list the 5 that you find most intriguing and describe them. So you're not going to just leave them at, for example, scale and leave that word. You're going to say, the reason why I like scale is because, or in scale, an artist will do this to involve the viewer, that kind of a thing. So that's what the style of quiz that we have. And I think next week it will be worthwhile actually going through the quiz, because then that'll help. So if the due dates come up before I say we're going to go through stuff, just remind me and I'll change the due date. And then one of the sections that you'll see in each of the quizzes as well is the background section. The background section, you're going to have anywhere from 4 to 8 artists, and there's going to be videos and stuff about each of these artists. This is where I need you guys' help. When I set this up, all of these links worked. If there's links that aren't working, please email me and let me know as we go through. Or if there's a link that just sucks and I need to change it, tell me so I can change it out. But this is where we talk about artists. In this case, these are artists where photography is integral to the presentation of the work or the completion of the work. Andy Goldsworthy is listed, Sandy Skoglund. Each of these artists are important, but I want you to most of these videos are going to be, I think that a couple of these aren't even videos, but I want you to spend at least 5 minutes looking at their website so you can at least talk about what kind of work that they do. Now, Slinky, he's really important. His work really depends on a conversation with scale, drawing the viewer in. So something to be familiar with. And then after this, you're going to be writing anywhere from I think the longest one is 7 paragraphs, so 3 to 7 paragraphs, where you're responding to the prompts. And the easiest way to do this is to copy the prompts where it talks about each paragraph over into another document, and then write 3 paragraphs, one under each of the prompts, and then you can submit that. Do you guys remember what the definition of a paragraph is in writing? It's going to be 3 to 5 sentences that are coherent with sharing a single idea intention. What that means is when you write this, and when I ask for 3 paragraphs, the first paragraph is going to be a grouping of 3 to 5 sentences that addresses what you learned from looking at this group of artists. Second paragraph is going to be a grouping of 3 to 5 sentences tied together, articulating which artist's work you like the most and explaining why. And then the third paragraph is going to be a group of 3 to 5 sentences bound by the idea where you list and give a brief explanation of the ways the artist you like the most went about involving the viewer. Identifying at least 4 of the methods that we talked about from the text. Now, one thing that is really important is notice that this writing assignment comes immediately after this background information. So when we talk about the artist, which artist do you think you need to look at to use for those paragraphs? This is not a trick question. So anybody, which artists, which pool of artists do you draw from? Do you go to the textbook to find them? No, Mary's shaking her head. No, you don't. Where do you go?
One of the artists listed here.
Exactly, exactly. And when you're supposed to, thank you very much. That is the perfect answer, Christina. When and that this is true for each and every one of the modules. You're going to go through, in this case, there are 8 different artists that are listed. And when you go to write this essay of 3 paragraphs, it calls for you to pick out one of the artists. You're going to pick out one artist out of those 8 that are listed in that background information. The next module is going to be a different collection of artists and a different set of questions. It might ask you to pick out 2 of the artists. Where are you going to go to pick out those 2 artists? You're going to go to the background section in that module, which is going to be right before where it calls for the essay. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, excellent. Allie, you gave me the thumbs up. That's good enough for me. This is really important. And I hope that everybody remembers it, because every single semester I have at least one person, and sometimes it's 2, who will get confused and start drawing just artists out of the woodwork. Don't do that. Just use the background artists. And there's anywhere from, I think the smallest one has maybe 5 artists and the biggest one has the 8 different artists. The other corollary to this is I teach several different classes, and sometimes if I'm grading at 12:30 in the morning, I get things confused. Or maybe my color is too tight. There's not enough oxygen flow to my brain cells. Whatever the case is, if I am grading and it doesn't make any sense at all to you, please don't get upset. Don't get mad. All you got to do is write me an email, write in the comments, write me an email and say, I think you're grading for the wrong thing. You asked me to pick an artist out of that list. I did. The artist was number 3 on the list, and you're telling me that it doesn't have anything to do with this. I'm pretty sure it does. That's where that works both ways. I've had people where they turned in the wrong assignment to the right module, and I said, this is the wrong assignment. And I've also graded the wrong assignment and told them they were doing everything wrong when they had done everything exactly right. So please promise you won't get upset at me. And I promise I will do, a pinky swear, I will do my best not to get upset at you. Just, if it's the wrong assignment, just resubmit the correct one. And if I graded the wrong assignment, just let me know. So sometimes it's embarrassing, but it does happen. Okay, I'm going to share this. This is what we are moving into for the next couple weeks. And like I said, you aren't going to get your kit probably until next week. So if you guys want to do everything else and just start collecting materials for your houses, that's fine. But what you're going to be doing is building a miniature house to take photos with. And these are some of the houses that people have made. And I want you to look at these. I will give a really, really awful example. Up here, Paper Home is an excellent website where the artist Charles Young has made a whole bunch of little paper houses. And he does animations, photography, and stuff of them all the time. You guys are all professional artists. I do not want this to be something that gingerbread house pattern you downloaded from the internet, cut out on printer paper, and just slapped together with masking tape that was even poorly torn. Don't do that. People have done that. It sucks. You will get a bad grade for that portion of the thing, even if your photos are amazing. For this, what I want you to do is look at paper house ideas on the internet. I don't know why my background is doing that. I have no idea why. It's really odd. But I want you to look for ideas. Look at the student examples that I have here, what people have done, and construct a house that is fun for you to work with. It does not have to be perfectly built. This is beautifully done. This is beautifully done. This is designed specifically this way. The person made it out of tag board and applied other materials because they thought it'd be fun to photograph. So do that. Make something that's fun for you to photograph. This is the same house, by the way. Same thing. You're going to submit 5 different photos, but that doesn't mean you have to take 5 different photos. Several students have taken 20 or 30 different photos, setting it up in different positions, different ways. What you're going to be doing is exploring how photography, how focal length, how focus, how lighting, all those kinds of things can completely change the atmosphere of the home. Now remember, this one is the exact same one as this one. Taking it from a shot like this, where you're on the same level as the door, gives a very different feel than this. Now, one of the least, and this is really fun, where they put the light on the inside, and this is the same house. Looks very different. Stuff like that is always a lot of fun. I'm going to stop sharing that. In this assignment, what we want to do is see how we can play around with ideas of focus and lighting to kind of see what we can do with the same object to make it feel different and give a different experience to the viewer. That's why you're doing this. One of the least successful things that people have done was somebody made a beautiful house, a really cute diorama, and then their 5 different photos were just walking around this diorama. That doesn't do anything. It's the same house. There's no lighting difference or anything. It's the same thing. And it's not, yeah, it's fun to make the diorama, but it's not an awful lot of fun to shoot because you're just walking around it, and it's no fun for the viewers. What I'm thinking is be creative in building the house. Do something you've always wanted to do. If you are a digital painter, maybe find a really cool design for a 3D house on the internet, relatively simple, but print out your 3D paint or your digital paints and use that as the sidewalls and the house. Paint your house in the digital media and print that out, and then just fold, cut, and tape and glue it together onto that paper diagram that you downloaded. That would be absolutely fine. If you want to do like the house from Up, don't print off the Disney house and leave it like that. If you want to print off that house to use as a pattern, that's fine, but do your own take on it. I've had people where they made the roof out of aluminum foil and then textured it to make it look like a tin roof. And they actually made a little scale model of the cabin that their family would go to for Thanksgiving every year that had a tin roof. Think of creative ways to do that. People have made smoke coming out of a chimney by taking cotton and pulling it apart a little bit so it was loose. And then when they stuff that into the chimney, they use a tea light and turn that on the inside, and that light was refracted through the cotton so it looked like glowing smoke from a fire. Maybe you like going on walks and you collect dead bark and leaves and stuff. Use that for the texture on the outside of the house. In your kit, the only thing that you'd really need to use for this house is tag board to give you the kind of the sturdiness to make a cardboard house. Again, look up to that Peter Young's website there and see what kinds of stuff he does. But actually, I'm gonna link to that. I'm gonna click on that link, and then I will do a screen share so you can see the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Here we go. Okay, see the kinds of homes that he's making? Even these little letters and stuff like that. And he does these animations that are a lot of fun. But his homes are not complicated. They're relatively simple, but he's made a lot of them. He does animations for ads on TV and different things like that, as well as animations for uh, like movie projects and things. And he makes some really fun looking stuff that is just great. But this is the kind of fun that I want you to have, designing a building and creating it in a three-dimensional space. I don't think I'm not expecting you to animate anything. That'd be so cool if you did, but I'm not. That's not in the parameters of this course. But like I said, you can find bark or leaves. Use that for the roof line. Use that for the walls. Make a model out of tagboard, and don't turn anything in this weekend on this. I want you to be working on your seven-sided model, anything with seven sides or more, and we'll talk about that. I want you to go through your reading, take your quiz if you can, and try to find house designs, get started collecting materials. And Wednesday, we'll talk about building the house a little bit more. Because by that time, hopefully you'll have your kit and you'll have the materials to do it. If you want to really get a jump on this, you get some, by tagboard, I'm talking about like manila folders, from file folder system. That's the kind of thing that I'm looking at, and I will show more examples of building the house. But it is really important. 2/5 of the grade on this is the construction of the house. If it looks like it's going to fall apart, you don't get a good score. If it looks like one of those fun things we looked at, you do get a good score on that portion of the grade. So be thinking about that. And the reason why the expectation level is high is because all of you are professional artists. You know what to do. You know how to do it. Use your media that you're comfortable with to help to make this house something cool. I want you to make it so that A, it's sturdy enough that you can take it around and do all sorts of different shots with it, night and day, inside, outside, on a tree limb, in front of somebody else's house, in front of a mailbox, whatever, it doesn't matter. Think of creative. It needs to be sturdy enough that you can use that as an object in creative photography. If one of your photos involves burning the house, I would save that for the very last. And take maybe a dozen photos at least. And second, the other thing I want you to do is make something that is going to be fun to photograph. Something with cutaways, like that one door that could be opened and closed in the house. Maybe the windows, you cut the window shapes out and you put tissue paper up so you can see the light coming through it. Do something three-dimensional for the roof. Do something three-dimensional for the slats on the siding so that you get really interesting shadows. That light does interesting things to it. Do fascinating colors. But spend your time on it. Spend a few hours making it so that you're happy with it. I don't want you to be embarrassed with this thing. And if it's good enough to put in one of the upcoming student shows on campus, that would be awesome. This would be a great thing to do. But the main thing that we're going through with this module is just exploring how photography can be integral to the creation of 3D volume. Can be integral to the sharing when we create that 3D volume. Slinkishu, I think, is would be an amazing artist to really look at for this because he deals a lot with scale. And I really like Sandy Skoglund and Andy Goldsworthy for the way that they integrate photography as a necessary part of their 3D construction. Now that is primarily what I wanted to go over, and I'm sorry we did go over about 15 minutes. If you guys have any questions, ask me. We'll go over. We'll talk about it next week as well. But the main takeaways are: I need your help in, like, if I'm stacking too many due dates and stuff like that, let me know. Most of the due dates that you see are actually the read by dates, so I want you to cover the material. And also know that both of us need to be flexible. I need to be flexible to accommodate your schedule, to make sure that you can succeed, and you need to be. I hope that you are flexible in regards to my work, so that you understand we're kind of creating this class together. By the end of September, we'll have this squared away. There was something else that was really super important. And it's not in my notes. It just occurred to me and I lost it. Oh well, if I can think of it before we go, I will. If I can't, and I think of it later, then we'll do it. Christina, you have your hand up?
Yes, I wondered about the three-dimensional shapes that we made, the cube item. Did we just put a picture of that in the submission for our attendance, or do we show those here tonight, or how do you want that
Yeah,
turned in?
if you brought it, you can do that. But there is something where you do submit it,
Okay.
um, at least the name of it and an image of it somewhere. And I think it's that one of those pinky swear things. I think somebody said that they had in their submission that they had shown it to the class, but we hadn't had a meeting yet, so I don't know how that would work. Um, if you have it with you, go ahead and show it. I think that may have been the important thing that I was forgetting about, and we will talk about this more next week as well. Who has it with them? Everybody that has it with you, just show it up on your screen, and then okay. Uh, Whitney, what is that called?
This is a hexagramic pyramid.
Okay, excellent. Millie, what is that called?
Let's see. This one is the square antiprism.
Okay, excellent. Very good. Christina, what is yours called?
It's a cuboctahedron.
All right, excellent. Perfect. Brianna, what's yours called?
Mine just said it was a cubic shape. It didn't really have a specific name.
Okay, could you hold it up again?
It has 9
All
sides.
right. We are going to call it a dynamically transected cube.
I like that.
Which means that the transection impacts directly the 3D volume. So yeah, excellent, very good. Each of you needed to do that. One of the things I wanted to say tonight is that all of you are very experienced with two-dimensional art. When we go into 3D design, you may experience a headache because your brain is actually constructing new neuronic pathways. This is another reason why I need you to spend a significant amount of time when you work on these projects. Not 45 minutes, but like for this house, I want you to spend several hours on it. Just like it says, hours designing it, hours building it, and photographing it. The reason is when you do this, your brain will start making new physical neuronic pathways to help your brain make the adjustments to 3D design. You may experience headaches. That's actually something that almost everybody who's taken this class has had when they have been focusing on 2D art for more than 3 years, because you are thinking differently. And we'll go over again those shapes. Everybody who didn't show their shape tonight, please show it next week. But those shapes, when you saw them on the screen, you printed it out on a flat piece of paper. It's two-dimensional. You were asked to cut, fold, and then tape it together. And what kind of process is happening as you're doing that to that two-dimensional piece of paper?
It's
You're
becoming
forcing,
three-dimensional.
yeah, you're forcing it into the three-dimensional realm. Exactly, that's exactly right. And there is some damage involved. There are some things that are completely different. But I want you to think about a little bit. Try to remember the kind of processing that your brain did as you went from the realization that this is a two-dimensional printout to holy crap, it is turning three-dimensional. Do you guys remember that transition at all? I first experienced this when I was doing origami. folding this, I was thinking it's just a bunch of random folds, but I followed the directions and all of a sudden, holy crap, it turned into a frog. Not only that, but the frog's legs actually moved. Well, when I moved them, but the frog's legs could actually move. That was transformative for me because it made me realize that we could shift from 2D into the 3D realm. And I want that just to be bubbling in the back of your head as we move forward. And pay attention to these kinds of shifts because in future classes, I want you to be able to talk about them. What is going on in your brain as you shift from two-dimensional thinking into three-dimensional thinking? How did Captain Kirk beat Khan? In Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. How did he beat him? Anybody? Any of you guys Trek fans? I am so disappointed in the American educational system. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, James Kirk beat Khan. And this, anybody watches that and tells us, the class, about it next week, everybody who does that gets extra credit, by the way. He beat him because Captain Kirk was a three-dimensional thinker and Khan was not. He could only think on planes, on the surface of planes. He was a two-dimensional thinker. It was key to the success of the entire movie and future franchise of all Star Trek everywhere. So I'm sorry for the spoiler, but there it is. Again, if you can watch it this weekend and tell me about it next week during our meeting, you get an extra credit. Of course, it doesn't mean an awful lot, but still, you get it. All right, any last questions before we wrap it up for tonight? Again, don't stress out about the house being due next weekend. We're going to take an extra week to work on it because you guys won't even have access to your kits until next week because of the construction stuff. So don't worry about that. Remind me if I don't make the change by Wednesday. Remind me to make the change in the due dates and stuff like that. Okay. But when you do this house, and this is for everybody listening to the recording of this or here in person tonight, make sure you take the time to make a nice house that's fun to photograph and is strong enough that you can take it around and take different creative photos of it. All right. Whatever questions you have, let's talk about them Wednesday or email them to me in the meantime. It will usually be up within 12 hours. Our internet has been really good. There has been times before where it's taken me 20 hours to upload the video. So if it doesn't show up right away, I'm sorry. There's not an awful lot I can do, but I will put this up online as soon as possible, and then it will show up in your attendance thing. All right. And even if you're here tonight, you still need to submit 5 things that you learned, plus the name of your shape for the attendance. All right. Any other questions? All righty then. You guys have just a really wonderful weekend. I think, is it Labor Day holiday coming up? Is that right? Is that next Monday? Anybody?
I think it's the following Monday.
Okay, if it's the following Monday, okay, well, just if it's a holiday, be safe. I'm pretty sure, I'm hoping it's the following Monday. That makes more sense to me. But as you guys are driving around and stuff, these holidays like Labor Day and stuff like that, that is the most dangerous time to be on the road. So just be extra careful. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all on Wednesday. Thank you for being here tonight. It makes my job so much easier.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.